They turned the delivery truck around in front of my store at 10 in the morning, right when the school moms were buying paintbrushes and the plumbers were picking up PVC cement. The driver wouldn't meet my eyes as he waved the clipboard. "I'm sorry, ma'am. New policy. We can't unload with a lien on your inventory." My customers froze, pipes in their hands, a bag of potting soil halfway to the counter. "A lien? Against me?" He flipped the page to show a copy of a debt certificate, bold letters across the top like a scar. "Acknowledgement of private loan, $96,300. My signature crooked at the bottom, next to a notary seal smudged pale as a dirty coin. I've rung up nails and screws in this town for 38 years. I know when people are pretending not to stare. I also know when I've never signed anything in my life with that particular wobble to the L in Lena. My hands didn't shake. My stomach went still, the way it used to when my late husband turned into a skid on black ice. I thanked the driver, told Jenny behind the counter to hold everyone's purchases at last week's prices until I figured it out, and locked myself in the back office. The certificate had been slipped under the door sometime before dawn. I don't sleep much since Martin passed. My routine is to brew coffee at 5, open the side door to let in the air from the river, and count the till. The door had been latched when I arrived. The office window was locked. But there it lay on my gray metal desk, next to the pencil cup our youngest granddaughter painted for me when she was 6. The seal caught my eye. The date was typed as April 14th, a Sunday. Our notary at the shipping store is closed Sundays. And the phrase inventory float appeared twice in the text, a term I've never used. In my world, you pay your vendor on 30 days or you call and ask for mercy. You don't dress it up. By noon, the gossip was a low hum outside. We're a mid-sized Ohio town where people remember your first broken arm and your second husband. The church ladies were discussing poor Lena and her debts by the birdseed rack. My daughter-in-law texted a message that looked supportive if you didn't know her. "Mom, are you okay? Maybe it's time you let us help manage things." She added a heart emoji, our family's favorite bandage for awkwardness. And then my grandson Mason walked in with a new haircut and a leather binder, because humiliation likes an audience. He set the binder on the counter and spoke just loudly enough for the regulars to hear. "Grandma, I want to be professional about this. You signed the paper. I notarized it to protect both of us. The interest rate is fair. If you start paying now, we can avoid further legal action." When he called me grandma in that tone, like a brand name on a product he owned, something inside me curled. He's 24, handsome in a way that yields free refills and no speeding tickets, and lately always investing in new schemes. He leaned on the counter, flashed the page at the contractors who pretend not to listen, and slid it back into his leather binder. "I'll email you the wire info," he added, as if we were colleagues. I watched him leave without breaking eye contact, not angry, just narrowing in on the one truth I could feel. The L in my name had been forged by a hand that knew me too well. I closed the shop at 3 with a note apologizing to customers and walked to the county building 2 blocks over, my feet remembering the path from renewing dog licenses and paying property tax. I asked at the recorder's office if any filings had been made against Hayes Hardware. The young clerk, a shy girl who sometimes buys masking tape here for her art projects, looked at me, hesitated, then sent me a message to the side. "There was a UCC filing yesterday afternoon listing Mason Brooks as a secured party. Are you aware?" My chest tightened, but not from fear, from relief that the fog had edges. She printed me a copy and, after a beat, lowered her voice. "It was filed right before we closed, Miss Hayes. The notary's stamp number is off. The same number appeared on a complaint last month that came back flagged." I tucked the paper under my arm like an umbrella and thanked her with a look. She slid a sticky note with a name across the counter so subtly I almost missed it. R. Fairchild, licensed investigator, Rhett Postal Inspector. The page with my forged signature rustled as I stepped back into the hallway. In the glare of the fluorescent light, the L looked even more wrong. That night, after I locked up and set the alarm, I called the number on the sticky note and a voice answered that sounded like it had been listening to people lie for 30 years. "MS. Hayes," he said, not waiting for me to finish introducing myself. "The question is not whether you signed. The question is whether he can show you did. We can start tomorrow." Bring me coffee and the paper. I'll bring a magnifier. I whispered thank you into the quiet store. It felt like the first solid step in weeks. The bell over the front door clinked once in the wind. Finally, I smiled. A stranger had leaned in, and I wasn't alone. I fell asleep with the copy of the filing next to my pillow and woke at 4 to the cold thought people only admit to themselves in the dark. My grandson might not stop at paper. And in the morning, the bank called. Mrs. Hayes, this is Teresa from First River Community Bank. I wanted to alert you that your revolving credit line is temporarily suspended pending review of an adverse filing. She was very polite, and I pictured her at her desk with the little fern I'd given her last year, reading from a script she hated. I understand, Teresa, I said, already pulling open the file drawer where I kept vendor agreements and the credit line contract. The clause was there, as standard as the kettle in my break room. Adverse lien on inventory triggers a review. The rule of the world had been written into my life with neat attorney font years ago, and now it had teeth. At the hardware store, we keep inventory moving by trusting one another. Mr. Alvarez delivers lumber on Tuesdays because I helped his youngest with his science fair. The plumbing supplier extends 30 days because I once drove out in a snowstorm with a space heater and a box of donuts when their warehouse freezer went out. But policy is policy, and the taxpayers don't pay the bank to be sentimental. By lunchtime, my phone was a flock of robins pecking the same seed. Did you hear? Is it true? It's not true, right? My neighbor across the alley, Felix, the retired math teacher who pretends not to notice he's my security system, brought me a sandwich and set it down like a peace offering. He was here late, he murmured, eyes on the back office door. Who? I asked, though I knew. Mason. Tuesday night. I thought you knew. I took a breath and set the sandwich aside. I appreciate you telling me, Felix. He nodded, guilty for something that wasn't his, and shuffled back to his apartment with the slow walk of a man who'd like to pretend he can't see sharper than most. At 3, I met my daughter-in-law, Paula, at the cafe. She'd texted me that we needed to talk, which is the phrase my generation used when we were divorcing and hers uses when there's a group chat. She arrived with a breezy scarf and a frown that said, "Martyr." Mom, this is all a misunderstanding. Mason's been under stress. He's trying. He told me he helped you with a loan to cover your inventory after the winter slump. An older woman can forget. The last words hung between us like smoke detectors going off. I studied my spoon. Paula, I said, calm and quiet because yelling has never fixed anything. An older woman can also run a profitable store for 38 years and remember what she never signed. Her smile tightened. You've always been proud, Mom. Maybe too proud to ask for help. He's only doing what any grandson would do. I thought of what any grandson would do, like shovel the store's steps or fix the squeak in the office door, not file a lien with my name bent out of shape. Paula's blind spot was always the same. If a problem threatened the family picture she posted on holidays, she would repaint it rather than admit the stain. Before closing, the mail arrived with the kind of letter that makes your hands cold even if the store is warm, certified, with a window on the front and a court crest in the corner. Notice of claim on debt acknowledgement, a hearing set in 2 weeks on whether the debt was enforceable. The attached affidavit was signed Mason Brooks, creditor, asserting that he had advanced funds to Hayes Hardware to preserve business operations and that I had agreed to repay with interest. I recognized the language, not because I'd ever used it, but because it was the kind of thing my store accountant, Ruth, would never let me write. My heart didn't pound, it paced itself. I told Jenny to go home, turned the sign to closed, and read the letter again in the quiet. Somewhere between the bank call and the cafe chat, a tremor of embarrassment had begun to take root. Shame is the cheapest weapon. It costs the user nothing, but makes you pay with silence. The letter was designed to make me shrink. Instead, I reached for my jacket. I took the long way to Fairchild Investigations. The office was over the bakery, up a narrow staircase that smelled of cinnamon and wet coats. The investigator, Robert Fairchild, met me at the door with a magnifier, a legal pad, and no small talk. Say everything in order and don't apologize for any part of it, he said. I'll interrupt if you skip something. I laid out the papers. He looked, not at the signature first, but at the notary seal. Expired registration, he muttered. And see this? Ink pulling away at the edges, not applied at the same time as the signature. I exhaled through my nose, a laugh without humor. You sound sure, Mr. Fairchild. I'm not a handwriting expert, Miss Hayes, but I've pulled lies out of envelopes for a living. What do you need from me? Access to your computer, your office alarm logs, the security camera you refuse to install because you think it means you don't trust people. I'll buy the cameras tomorrow, I said. Buy them tonight, he replied. And give me permission to subpoena IP logs from the county recorder's online portal. People like your grandson forget that the internet keeps better records than any of us. On my way downstairs, I noticed the bakery clerk glancing at the papers in my hands, saw the quick roll of pity in her eyes. I bought a cinnamon roll and, before leaving, said aloud so the two teenagers in the corner could hear, "See you at the hearing." The next morning, they told their mothers, who told their sisters, who told my customers that Lena wasn't crawling into a corner. Reputation cuts both ways. It can smother you, or it can announce that you're still standing. That night, as if the universe thought I needed coordination of attacks, my son called. Mom, Paula says you're being difficult. Maybe it's time we talk about a power of attorney so we can help with decisions. We're worried. There it was, the help that takes away your keys. I thought of the reversed weakness locked in my drawer, the limited power of attorney I'd once drafted after my hip surgery that required any two of three people to sign, me, my accountant Ruth, and my late husband's lawyer. I had kept it unexecuted, a relic of fear. You're right, I said, voice steady as a level on a workbench. Let's talk about how you can help. His sigh of relief traveled across the line. Tomorrow? Tomorrow, I agreed. When we hung up, I pulled the form from the drawer and called Ruth. Tomorrow, I'm going to pretend to lean, I told her. While we set a trap. She chuckled. About time you gave yourself permission to be heavy. The following afternoon, a courier delivered another envelope. This one wasn't from the court, it was from a law office I didn't recognize, with Mason CC'd. Inside was a friendly proposal. If I acknowledged the debt inside 10 days and began repaying, Mason would forgo any claim for damages arising from public misstatements demeaning his reputation as a lender. I stared at the line until the words blurred. It takes a particular kind of shamelessness to steal your grandmother's name and then accuse her of defamation for not agreeing. I slid the letter into a fresh manila folder labeled with Ruth's neat block letters. Leverage. I went to bed early and woke at midnight to the dull conviction that something in my office had moved. The next morning, the blue folder with vendor contracts was missing from the second drawer. I had last used it Tuesday. My hands stayed steady, but the skin on my forearms prickled. In a small town, theft of paper feels more intimate than burglary. It means someone knows where you keep your proof. I called Fairchild. He's noticed we aren't playing along, I said. Good, he replied. Means he'll make mistakes. Tonight, we'll check the shipping store footage. The notary he used. I interrupted. Closed on Sundays. Exactly, he said. Which makes it convenient that the stamp he copied belonged to a notary who reported it stolen in March. If I slept that night, I don't remember. By morning, the cinnamon roll box was empty, and my resolve was full. The shipping store manager, a woman named Tasha with silver nail polish and zero patience for fraud, greeted us behind the counter. I remember him, she said as soon as Fairchild showed Mason's photo. Pretty boy with a new phone. Wanted to know what a notary seal should look like. We pulled the footage. There he was 2 weeks ago, leaning over a display, photographing sample documents and asking the clerk about stamps while buying bubble mailers. Do you notarize on Sundays? He asked on the recording. We're closed, the clerk said. He left with a smile that missed his eyes. Fairchild secured a copy of the video. Next stop was the county building. The shy clerk, her name was Zoe, I made sure to ask, had already begun digging. The IP address for the filing isn't from your store, Ms. Hayes, she whispered. It's from an apartment complex on River Road. The same IP popped on a filing last month in a property dispute that was later withdrawn. She slid another sticky note. The withdrawn filing had been by a friend of Mason's. We walked to my store and installed the cameras front, back, and over the office. It felt like admitting you live in the real world. At closing, Ruth came through the back with her old green ledger. She has kept numbers for me on paper for decades, not because she refuses the digital world, but because she respects proof you can hold. No entry for any loan from Mason, she said. No need for it either. Your winter slump wasn't a slump. We ended January up 6%. He's counting on your embarrassment to keep you from saying that out loud. She underlined a figure, and for the first time in days my throat tightened. I dabbed at my eye and lied that a speck of dust had gotten under my contact, though I stopped needing those last summer. We set the first part of the trap that evening. I called Mason. I can't sleep over this, I told him, letting my voice wobble in exactly the way his version of me sounded in his head. If we agree to a payment schedule, do you promise to leave the store out of your documents? He exhaled, loudly enough that I could picture the smirk. Of course, Grandma. We can handle this within the family. Send me your bank account details for the wire, I said, and a copy of the original note with the notary acknowledgement. He agreed too fast. Within an hour, he emailed a PDF. Fairchild's reply was waiting. He just sent us a digitized version. Metadata says it was created in a template editor last week. And look at the notary acknowledgement. The seal number doesn't match any active notary in the county. Can we prove he knows that? I asked. We can if we make him show the original. Which is why you will promise a first payment on the condition that he brings the original note to Ruth's office in the morning. I swallowed. If I do that, he'll know. He'll know we're not as soft as he thinks. Good. There was a small victory in the morning. The office cameras caught a silhouette at 2 a.m., testing the side door. The alarm stayed armed. The silhouette left. The new blow came at 10. I received a notice of a temporary restraining order on my personal account filed by Mason's attorney, seeking to preserve collateral. The hearing was added to our stack 1 day earlier than the debt hearing. Strategy by ambush. It works only if you arrive surprised. We didn't. At noon, a woman I recognized from church, who had always called me dear in a tone that meant lesser, stopped me by the paint samples. I'm praying for your humiliation to be brief, she said with a smile that showed expensive dental work. Thank you, I replied. And I'm praying for your dentist's conscience. She blinked, then tilted her head like a cat who hears the can opener. I only realized why she looked familiar later. She was the treasurer for the church committee where donations for the youth trip had failed to clear last month. A tiny inconsistency there would come back as a clear line. Before closing, Ruth called. He came, she said, with a folder and a smirk. He refused to leave the original note in my custody. But I asked to photograph it. The edges were too clean for a document supposedly drafted months ago, and the notary seal was darker than your signature, which means it wasn't pressed at the same time. Also, he couldn't answer when I asked why the phrasing in the debt acknowledgement matched line by line a free online template. He left in a hurry. When I hung up, I found the blue vendor folder slipped under my back door. It had been returned, -3 contracts. The omission was a confession. He had needed the folder for proof he didn't have. That night, Fairchild called with a voice like gravel. You should hear this. He played a muffled recording. Mason's voice at a bar, laughing to a friend. It's not fraud if she's family. I'm just taking my advance. She owes me, man. I paid her phone bill for like 6 months when I was 18. His blind spot announced itself bright as a billboard. He thought entitlement was a defense. On the recording, the friend snorted. Dude, not sure judges use she owes me in their decisions. The clink of beer glasses punctuated the moment the trap door opened beneath my grandson, and he hadn't realized it yet. Courtrooms are public rooms where everyone pretends not to know each other. In ours, they do know, and the pretense is the performance. The day of the hearing, the gallery was a sampler of my life. The plumbers, the moms, the church treasurer with her designer tote, my son shifting in his seat because Paula's nails were digging crescents into his sleeve, and Zoe from the recorder's office sitting 3 rows back with her hair in a neat bun. Fairchild sat next to me with his magnifier and a folder labeled Timeline. Ruth placed the green ledger on her lap like armor. The judge, a woman who used to buy snow shovels from me after winter storms, entered with the same face she uses for road conditions, neutral and unamused. Mason's attorney began with a friendly voice that made the words sharper. Your Honor, this is a simple matter. My client lent funds to his grandmother to support her small business. She admitted the debt. He pointed at the text of my promise to begin paying in exchange for a copy of the original. I stood a little taller. Fairchild nudged my elbow. Breathe. It was our turn. We did not roar, we enumerated. Fairchild established the notary seal's expiration with a printout of the state registry. The shipping store footage showed Mason photographing samples and asking about Sunday notarizations. Zoe testified, cheeks pink but voice steady, that the IP address for the filing matched an apartment on River Road, and that the notary seal number matched one reported stolen in March. Ruth testified with the authority of a woman who has never lost a penny. No entry for any loan, no cash infusion needed, winter sales up 6%, and the business's accounts clear of any transfer from Mason at the time the loan supposedly occurred. The bank's compliance officer, at my request and under subpoena, confirmed that they had suspended my credit line solely due to the lien filing and described the reputational harm that follows such a filing in a small market like ours. Fairchild played the bar recording. It didn't make Mason look like a criminal, it made him look like a boy cosplaying one. The judge's eyebrows moved half a centimeter, which, for her, is a shock. Then came the unexpected ally in the shadows I hadn't realized had been watching. The quiet accountant from the church, Mr. Bruno, the one who rarely spoke at potlucks beyond asking if we needed more tongs, stood up when the judge asked if there were any more witnesses. He cleared his throat. Your Honor, I have something relevant. He held up a printout of bank transfers. I prepare reports for the church committee. Funds meant for the youth trip were diverted last month to an account belonging to NV Ventures. The memo line says loan proceeds repayment. He turned to face the gallery, and the church treasurer's face drained like someone pulled a plug. The judge asked him to approach. The transfers were from a donation account to Mason's LLC. A fake benefactor had been dressed in church clothes. The help that had been smoothing family conversations had been funneling community money to a young man's attempt to formalize greed. The courtroom went very quiet. The silence was not the silence of gossip. It was the silence of a collective exhale when denial collapses. My son leaned forward, his face shocked in a way I had not seen since he broke his arm when he was 10 and realized bones are not indestructible. Paula stared at the treasurer as if recalculating a budget. Mason glanced at his attorney with a plea that said, "Fix it," and the attorney arranged his face into nothing. Fairchild did one more small thing that took the air out of the room. He held up the original note that Mason had refused to leave with Ruth. We never possessed it, Your Honor, but we photographed it. He projected the photograph. Note how the notary seal is darker than the signature. Also, the paper's edges are too clean, no staple shadows, no scan wear, consistent background texture. Lastly, the template language is identical to a free form from Quick Loans Pro, including a comma splice in the second paragraph. He put the template on the screen next to it. Even without law school, the gallery could see it. A cut-and-paste debt hung on my neck with a ribbon from the internet. The judge spoke finally, carefully. Miss Hayes, I am sorry your business suffered harm. Mr. Brooks, you have abused both family trust and the public filing system. She declared the debt acknowledgement void, ordered the lien removed, and referred the matter of the stolen notary seal to the county prosecutor. Then she turned to the bank compliance officer. Please note for the record that Ms. Hayes' credit line is reinstated effective immediately. She awarded damages for reputational harm, money I had not asked for but which would rebuild my order of PVC cement and get the truck back for good. She also ordered Mr. Brooks to reimburse my legal costs and the investigation's expenses. The church treasurer, suddenly very small in her expensive scarf, was asked to remain for an officer to take a statement. And then there was the cliffhanger of silence, a human one. My grandson turned toward me, his mouth opening, then closing. For the first time in weeks, his posture didn't say swagger. It said wait. He looked not just at me but to my right, where my son stood without the buffer of Paula's hand on his sleeve. That look, puzzled and searching, was the moment he realized the consequences didn't end at the court clerk's counter. They would come to dinner tables. After court, I did not gloat. I signed the paperwork, shook hands with Zoe, hugged Ruth until her ledger jabbed me in the ribs, and walked back to my store with the measured steps of a person returning to something she built with her back and her brain. The truck arrived the next morning. The driver looked relieved. "Back to normal, ma'am," he said. I corrected him gently. "Better than normal." The plumbers clapped politely like we were at a child's recital. The moms pretended to choose between 2 shades of blue and chose both to celebrate. Mason came by 3 days later. He did not bring a binder. He brought his eyes up. He stood by the counter where he had tried to turn me into a debtor and said one sentence as if it hurt to say, "I'm sorry." I believe in apologies when they are attached to actions, so I nodded without absolution. "You will pay the damages and the costs," I said. "You will apologize publicly to the vendors you called about my debt. You will do community service at the youth program you indirectly stole from." He swallowed and nodded. "All of it." And then, without planning to, I added, "If you want to talk about why you needed to feel bigger, I'm here." The invitation wasn't forgiveness, it was the replacement for shame he would have to build himself. The fake benefactor resigned from the church committee before they formally asked. Mr. Bruno took over the reports, and the youth trip happened anyway because the town brought in donations like rain barrels catching a storm. People came by the store who hadn't set foot in months to buy a packet of screws they didn't need, a symbolic purchase with the price tag of respect. Paula stopped suggesting power of attorney. She started bringing me soup on Fridays and asking about my inventory like it was a language she could learn. My son came on Saturday mornings to carry lumber for Mr. Alvarez when my knee was sore, no speech, just the action of a man who had looked at his mother in a courtroom and recognized a strength that didn't roar. I made one deliberate choice that might look small from the outside. On Wednesdays, I started a free workshop at the store for teenagers on how small business works, credit lines, vendor terms, the grammar of the forms that can hurt you if you sign without reading. Mason came to the back of the room and listened, quiet, more than once. Not as a penance, but because some part of him had wanted to be taken seriously and had grabbed the only tool he knew, a shortcut. If there's a lesson to take from this, I'm telling you like a friend leaning across a table over coffee, it's that dignity doesn't mean silence. It means speaking precisely when your name is dragged, and it means knowing which papers matter and which don't. It's also a reminder that help sometimes puts a hand in your pocket, and the people who truly help will hand you a magnifier and make you read along. I still look at the L in my name when I sign the receipt log. It's always been a little crooked. That's mine in my own hand. Now, when the store is quiet at dusk and the new camera's tiny light blinks red, I sometimes think of how the town stared at me as the truck drove away that first day. Then I remember how they stared in the courtroom when truth, very plain and very public, stacked up like lumber and built a platform to stand on. The bell over the door chimes, and I hear a young voice ask for advice on fixing a wobbly shelf. I put down the ledger, smile, and stand. I have time. And I have proof.